live. I'm preparing the live stream meeting. And it's setting up then that connection between Zoom and YouTube. Let me see if it comes up. And I see everyone. Perfect. And now let me share my screen. See my screen. And you see each other here. And I'm going to my content. And I'm going to look at what's due. I'm going to what's due assignment. Last Wednesday it was data knowledge management. This Wednesday is information security, your AI powered research assistant assignment. And it's along with your adaptive assignment, your quizzes. And what I'd like you also to look at for, this is new, Lily, for Wednesday, and we'll take a look at this, is HTTPS security IT Miami.edu. So what do you think that is? Connor, what do you think this link is going to be?
Maybe about the security features that University of Miami
Of
has.
where? At the university, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's the idea of this. If I go to Wiley Plus in the readings, and in the information security chapter, basically, if I go into introduction to security, you'll see that we talk about general security. So if we have general security, Zara, when I talk about general security, it's going to be protection, you know about that, of any criminal activity, any damage, any loss. So basically, where do you live, Zara?
Like
On campus or off campus?
off campus.
Off campus. You live in a house or apartment?
I live in an apartment.
And how many of you live there?
3.
Three. And you each have your own bedroom or you share?
We each have our own bedroom.
Okay. So are you ever worried about your security in your apartment?
No, I feel like it's fairly safe. They don't let people like come up unless they live there.
Okay, so you have some, so what do they do? So how do you have not strangers walking around the halls?
They have a doorman.
Okay, they have a doorman, right? So that's security right there, right? Even though why are you not concerned is there's a doorman. Basically physically, there's somebody there, and not everybody hopefully can roam around. Do you lock your door when you
No,
leave? What?
not really.
Not really. So your doors are open. So you have some kind of vulnerability. Maybe if somebody, even though you think that maybe your neighbors could be passing by, and maybe if they were drunk, they could they just enter your room, enter your apartment?
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. So one of the things is we think about kind of definition. Do you have a car?
No,
Sorry.
I'm not.
Okay. And if you and David, do you have a car? Camacho.
Yes, I do.
You do.
Hmm.
And basically, you have a car, you bring it on campus?
Yeah.
You bring it on campus. And are you concerned about this? Do you lock your car?
Yes.
You lock your car. Why do you lock your car?
So no one enters?
Or so no one enters, no one takes it, okay? And what else do you have to secure that car? You do anything else? You have insurance?
Yeah, I do.
Why do you have insurance?
Like if I get in
Why?
a car crash or something?
Okay, first of all, it's required, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to drive a car in our state, you need insurance. And it's
Yeah.
basically what? If you get a car crash, do you have insurance for maybe possibility of what? Somebody stealing the car, maybe for towing, right?
Yeah.
There's reason. So basically, for those kind of things, we have something, you have some kind of controls, physical controls. For you,
Mm-hmm.
Czar, that physical control of regular security, somebody at the door, right? That doorman there. And for David, it could be for his car is what? I'm going to lock my car and then I'm going to buy insurance. And the insurance, by the way, Sarah, do you have apartment insurance or no? Against your valuables?
Yes, I do.
You do. So basically, you have a way. And basically, why do you have insurance? That in case somebody steals something or does any damage to your place, at what? You're transferring the risk to another party. That's called transference risk. Do you understand that, Connor? So we're transferring that risk to another party. We always do that. The university, Connor, for their information security, is what they're really concerned is they have a hospital, and they have something. Hospitals are very vulnerable to what they call ransomware. Have you ever heard of that, Connor? I can't hear you. We're
think so.
recording. So shaking your head or not, it doesn't, it's almost like deposition, right? When they say you're in court, you have to answer yes or no. So in this case, Connor, is what is the question? What is the comment then? What were you shaking your head about?
I've heard of what was it? Malware?
Malware, right. Malware, and there's something called ransomware. Have you ever heard of that? It's interesting. Besides malware, I'm going to put it here in my notepad. You see my notepad here? It's called ransomware. And that ransom, have you ever heard when somebody gets Connor, somebody gets kidnapped, and what do? Somebody kidnaps them, and then the perpetrators basically call up and say, hey, we want some ransom. Give us $1 million and we'll bring back your son, Connor, safe and sound, right? And you hope your parents will cough up the money, or you know what I mean, or say, take him. They're not going to say that with such a fine son. But anyways, what do they do with hospitals now? The hackers is they take over the hard drives of the systems, Connor, and then they basically, for instance, the hospital can't get into their system because they've locked down their systems. And can you imagine, Connor, if they have surgery scheduled for tomorrow? Tomorrow's Tuesday, right? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars the hospital is making on these surgeries, and if they can't get into their systems, they can't tell who's supposed to come and what are they going to operate on, and all those systems and all the IoT, the devices linked into it, they have ransomware. And what do you think hospitals do for controls? There's some kind of controls, right? We have some kind of controls. And what do you think they do is they have to transfer the risk. They can have insurance, but they also, what do you think the ransomware, do you think they ask for $1 million? Do you think they ask in dollars?
Probably like Bitcoin or something.
Bitcoin. They're asking Bitcoin, and they usually don't even ask for a lot of money. They said, give me $100,000. What's $100,000? One operation probably costs more than $100,000. So they'll make it small amounts. The hospitals are basically, and guess what? Hospitals have Bitcoin accounts right there because they know the idea of risk. And I'm going to tell this to everyone, risk is never zero. Right? You agree with me, right? In this case, if I think about it, Anastasia, right? Risk is never zero. It's a question of degrees. Some places are like more riskier than the others. And even if I have insurance, what do insurance companies tell you? Insurance companies tell you you have to do due diligence. You have to perform correctly in order for us even to give you insurance. So sometimes, Azara, you have to be careful, even though you have like the apartment insurance. One of the questions the insurer will say, did you lock the door? And they may say, we're not going to pay you because you didn't do your due diligence. I'm not saying they will, but that's a possibility that they're asking on the other party's end who's getting the insurance that you have to basically provide some type of controls yourself. So the idea of information security comes where that broad definition is these are going to be an organization usually has to secure their information. They have certain processes and policies that they have to abide by, and they're preventing them from unauthorized access. Only people that have access, they have to basically prevent then any type of disclosure somebody would take. We certainly don't want to have, for instance, everybody's GPA. They don't want any disruption. They don't want them to shut down the university, shut down the hospital. Modification. Remember, in our audit area, Zara, what can we do? You can edit everybody's work in the audit area. In the regular area, you can't. So you want to make sure that items that need to be secure cannot be easily modified, cannot be deleted. And in this case, then you want to basically make sure that your systems are up and running and you're doing due diligence. So that's the idea when they're thinking about security, and they divide it up into what is a threat. And a threat is any danger in which an information resource may be exposed. So that threat could be basically that threat of locking down the university, and then the exposure would be the harm or loss of the damage, that I'm losing my records, that I'm not able to, and basically the vulnerability is the possibility that that threat will harm the resource. So those are the three that they always talk about in security. And the way that they talk about the idea for security is that they have to have the proper policies in mind. So when I look at this case, Aaliyah, when it looks like, what does information security refer to?
It's B.
So it's basically, I'm going to be talking about what? First of all, those processes. I got to figure out what processes I need to do, what policies to protect the information from that unauthorized access, use, disclosure, and destruction. So if I checked on the submit, I would get the correct answer. And in this case, Aaliyah, if I have small, faster, and inexpensive storage devices, computers, they're going to be more vulnerable. If they're very small, somebody can leave it on their desk, leave it in the library, right? Leave it around. And so they can be what? They can be easily lost, stolen, potentially exposing sensitive information. So these are the important areas that you need to be aware of. What I'm going to talk about is I have unintentional threats and deliberate threats. And the key here, what I'm going to work on today, is talking about information security controls. Ryan, what is your major?
I made mine. I don't know if there's another.
Hmm?
Me?
Yes, Ryan Walk.
Right now I'm business undecided.
Business undecided, okay.
Yeah.
When I think about security and information security, I know I have risks. And what is important is I want to mitigate risks. What does mitigate mean? Alicia, what does the word mitigate mean?
To like get rid of or like to
Does it get rid of?
avoid?
Does mitigate mean get rid of?
Well, not
Stephanie, does mitigate mean get rid of? What does mitigate mean?
It means to decrease it
To
as much as
decrease it.
possible.
Right. Now, could I ever, in that case, Alicia, could I ever, you think, eliminate all risks? That's of course, there's no way. So mitigate is the idea that I want to reduce it. Just like when David was talking about his car is still, even if he locked the car, have you ever heard of people stealing a car when the car is locked? Yes. So basically, it can happen, but at least he's going to reduce it. So basically, when I have unintentional threats from the organization, unintentional means I could have human errors that I just forgot to, I paste my password. A human error could be what? I clicked on a link and it took me and downloaded some malware, some spam. So I can think about a security. Let me just do this. Let me just go to the slideshow here and let me just do from this current slide. That if I think about security threats, I have security threats all over the place. If I think about the way this is a nice diagram for you to look at. If I think about it, I have outside threats and I have inside threats. This right here, this cloud means it's the internet. So these outside threats could be, I have through the internet, through browsers, through the network, I can have hackers come in. I can have denial of service, meaning that I would then have a number of bots basically so quickly try to inundate a server that other people couldn't use it. I could have viruses and worms connecting it. Somehow how I could get it was by clicking on a link that I was unaware of. I could have outside threats like for us, a hurricane, which is pretty, we don't have that right now. I can have man-made where somebody puts a fire, whatever, power outages. And then I have the area in which I have to worry about as an organization are my employees. My employees can cause havoc. I can have system software that controls problems, and I can have hardware problems. So these are called inside threats and outside threats. I can have both of those. And in human errors, then, I can have them from a number of different ways that if many times I decide to fire an employee, they may be disgruntled and I'll have some human errors. And sometimes it will be careless. Poor password selection. Basically, I careless with my laptop. Somebody can steal them. So there's a number of that. And social engineering. Maya, have you ever heard of social engineering? What that is?
No, I have not.
Social engineering, have you ever heard? Basically is people trying to scam you by being friendly, Maya. So basically, that perpetrator uses their social skills to try to trick or manipulate our employees and students to provide confidential information or passwords into the system without them knowing it. So Maya, I could befriend you, and then all of a sudden I said, Maya, let me take you out to lunch, and then you leave your laptop there with your credentials already there. Somebody passes by and can enter it. That's what they call kind of social engineering. And somebody calls you and then texts you and tells you, we're part of the UMIT and we're having some issues here. We just need to get into the system. Can you give me your password? Right. So these are kind of areas in which and deliberate threats are those that basically are by software generated, by human generated, that have attacks. And the idea is, when I talk about ransomware, is basically they have software there that if you click on a link, you may then download software that will make the system lock down and no one can get into the system except for the perpetrator. And they say, we will give you the code if you give us Bitcoin. So those are areas in which they have it. They talk about software, but this is what I want to cover tonight. And that is, we have risk. We know. We want to analyze our risk. And we also want, based on our risk, we want to say, how valuable is it? So if you think about it, Connor, I have PowerPoints on the system. Do I really? That's a risk. Somebody can steal them, but I have to think about what's the value of that. I'm not concerned about that, right, Connor? Really, I could say, let them take it. Even I'm posting it online. If somebody gets into Blackboard, they can post it and they can take all the PowerPoints that I want. But I have to be more careful about grades, right? I don't want anybody coming in and changing your grades, right, Connor? So I have to keep that more in the process. And then I have to have risk mitigation. And in risk mitigation, there's 3 facets. I can accept the risk. And in this case, Connor, I'm going to accept the risk of my PowerPoint. Let them take it. Risk limitation would be, I want to limit my risk. And risk transference, then, Connor, means what?
Transferring the risk?
Mm-hmm. Usually to whom? If I were the university and I have my security, I want to transfer the risk. Who would I transfer it to?
Like the IT department?
Well, they're part of me. So transferring it to the IT department, the risk. Part of it, yeah, is if I'm an employee, I said, you go ahead and take the risk. And they basically will try to mitigate it, but then would they transfer the risk too? What do we do about a car? How do we transfer the risk? Connor?
Insurance?
Get insurance. You think university can get insurance for securing their information resources?
Probably.
Yeah. But what? The insurance company would say, we will give you university insurance, but what? You have to do your part as well. So that is the key here, that you have to do your part. And basically on the part where you have to do it is you have to set up some kind of controls to mitigate that risk. Everybody understand that? In this case, Zara, we'll never get 100% secure. We always have risk. What we're going to do is try to mitigate it, reduce it. And by reducing it, we put in controls. Just like you're living in a building, Zara, where the control is, let's get a doorman. And not everybody can, from the street, move in. That's the control. Another one, a physical control, is lock the door. So I have physical controls. I have access control, so who can get in. But this is in information security. So I have communications controls. And then I even want to think about it. If I have issues, I need to have a plan, let's say, to continue business if I have a hurricane. Could this campus get a lot of damage? Yeah, Zara, right? It could be knocked out. It could be knocked out even with their network. So I need, as a business or as a university, to have a plan how am I can continue doing business if, God forbid, I have damage to my buildings. And then if you're in accounting, I have auditors that go in and audit if I have the right controls. So physical controls I have, right? Of, putting in gates, putting in doors, putting in badges. Do we have badges? Yeah, we have badges at the university, right? Putting in alarm systems, right? These are where my defenses are. For business continuity planning for the future, what do I want to do is maybe I want to even have, if I'm like Amazon, I want to have, and I'm based in San Francisco and I have a number of sites. What happens if there's a earthquake? I need to have a hot site. One of the ideas of a hot site means I need to have a backup of an entire system that will be up and running when my San Francisco office is down. A warm site means I'm going to I have everything, but it's not going to be so quick to up and running. It may take a few days. And a cold site is I have the building, but I'm going to need to build it up further. That's for my disaster recovery part. And then I have authentication, authorization. We have it at right? How do I get into the system? I have basically it has to authorize me, know who I am for authentications. I have communication controls for my firewalls. I have another way to get in through to communicate through the network. It's called virtual private network, where through tunneling I can get through the other end. And then this was a close. So what I want to show you, when I went back here to what's due, let me say, okay, here. It said securityitmiami.edu. So I want everyone to go here, and let me just go to information security. There is an office, and in my opinion, my humble opinion, they do not do a good enough job to explain to the faculty, to the employees, to students about their information security office. But you can see, what are they in charge of? They're in charge of the network. Anytime I go into this on campus, I go on campus with their network. And basically there's, they say here, remember, security is everyone's responsibility. I do not think they do a good enough job to tell me what I'm supposed to do. But you remember we talked about security, notice, how do you report an instance? You remember we talked about the idea of process and policies? Here is how do you report an instance? And they say the University Security Office protects what we call CIA. I'm going to put this in my notes, and you can put it in your notes too. I use the word CIA. It's not the spies, but rather confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the pillars of security in an organization. And I'll tell you why. Data that needs to be confidential has to be confidential. What has to be confidential? Give me one data about you that needs to be confidential. Adam. One piece of data the university has that you hope they keep confidential.
Grades.
Great. What else? Your health records, right? What else? Your social security number, right? What else? If they have your credit card information, right? Their financial information shouldn't be out on YouTube, right? On Instagram. So you're expecting confidentiality. And what is then, if I think about it, Dana, integrity. Data that is integrity. What does that mean to you? Your data has integrity. Dana.
I would say that means that like it's true to us and that we when we share our information, we don't want everyone to know it. So
yeah, but what does it mean integrity? The university already, Adam said, your grade should be confidential, right? It should only be shared with people that have a need to know. Remember, we talked about the need to know. My question to you is that after your GPA has, they're basically saying we're going to keep it confidential. What does your GPA of integrity mean?
that it's accurate.
It's accurate, right? That when an employer comes and sees Dana's GPA and it says 4.0, the employer can say, yes, that has integrity, right? And then nobody has been out there, selling grades. I was at another institution, and you know how they always tell entrepreneurs, I can tell the story. They always tell entrepreneurs what? That do something that you know. So at this university that I was at before, they had a student who did something that was before, and what they were in charge of the computer system. And basically at the bottom line is they were selling grades. Can you imagine that, Dana? So basically, how did they sell? They said, hey, I'm a student. I have access to the university's hardware and software. The need to know that gave him the ability to change grades. And what he did on the side is he started doing grade changes. The question is how did he do the grade changes? You think, does it take more time changing it from an F to an A than a B+ to A? What do you think, Dana? Does it cost that person any more time?
I think it's the same time.
Same thing, right? If you had an F, for me to go in and change it to an A, it would take the same amount. So he didn't charge by time. So how did he charge, you think?
Probably based on the grade.
But based on how many grade changes you want. So it would cost you more to go from an F to an A than from A- to an A, right? So he did that. So if I'm telling the story, he must have gotten caught. You agree with me, Daniel? If I'm telling this story about grade changes, right? I was not part of in the cahoots with this, right? So how did he get caught? Any idea? How did he get caught? What do you think, Connor? If I'm telling the story.
I'm not really too sure. Maybe I don't really know.
I don't know. Basically, anybody else. You could have controls, right? Somebody was changing grades, they saw maybe an instructor said, professor says, that person, I remember when I was checking my grades, I saw now all of a sudden he had it. Or maybe he wasn't supposed to be changing grades at 3:00 in the morning on a Sunday night. Maybe that could be it. Any other ideas? What it usually gets these guys, when they're greedy, what makes them, you think, get caught? What do you think, Brooks? How did he get caught? What happens with greed? Have you ever seen those when people say, I'll just do a little bit of stealing?
They overstep, you know.
What?
They overstep, or
Yeah, how? They raised their price.
because they always want more.
Yeah. So he was doing quite well. And then he, said inflation or whatever, he raised his prices. Somebody told on him. And it was embarrassment to whom? Not only to the university. It turned out that this person was the son of a computer science professor. It also turned out that they did not divide up their administrative versus their regular processes. They did it all on one system, on one database. They allowed the student to have access to it. And guess what? It was not only in the university paper, it was in the local newspaper too. So can you imagine, Brooks, what happens when you come in with interviewing, right? And then we say, oh, Brooks, you have a 4.0. And then they say, well, is that real or not? Right? Talking about what? Integrity. All right. So it was quite an embarrassment to everyone. And then how do you fix that? How do you go back and say, no, you know what, Brooks, you don't have a 4.0. We have to rearrange that. And then that employer says, oh, you have a 3.8. And they, well, how do we even know that's correct? So this is something that happens. And when you see, in this case, what the university is trying to do with this IT here, is they're saying they want to protect it and they want to foster a culture of security awareness and compliance, because many organizations need to be have compliance. If they're banking, they have to follow certain rules. If they're healthcare, they have to follow certain rules. And when I look at their security office, this almost looks like all the concepts that we're covering. Security governance. What does that mean, David Camacho? Security governance means that there are folks in the university that will oversee what's happening with their security, that they'll make sure that their security actions are taken without undermining the function to function effectively. Because guess what, David Camacho, they can make it so secure that we can't do our work, right? If they lock down everything, we're not being able to do it. So they're saying we have a security notice steering committee that will tell us which data we should hold on to. We'll be able to talk about basically what's priorities we should do based upon the risk. Basically, don't spend a lot of money preserving and protecting PowerPoints, but definitely preserve and protect the computers, basically preserve and protect the student data. What kind of policies should be done? Are you doing any education, any awareness? And then here comes the point in which we do it, that they have authentication. And what kind of vulnerabilities do we have in our institution? And what kind of risk assessments are we doing? Like we talked about. And what kind of regulatory compliance? Like FERPA is for education. If you're an educational institution, you have to abide by these rules. GLBA is for banking. PCI DSS means that it's for payment card industry, that if they're storing our payments, our credit card information, they have to be secured. These are going to be for financial, for hospitals, And how are they going to respond to how are they going to be responding to the incidents? How are they going to document it? And you remember we talked about business continuity and disaster recovery. They better have plans. So you can see that the university really is following those pillars of security. And then they say, these are our services, these are our policies, these are our risk assessments. So if I go to risk assessments, and you can go to, you'll see here that they have standards and it's governance by security policies. The question is, they can have all this in running, but what are they doing in real time? We're not sure what is actually happening. So they have all these policies written. You can get ChatGPT and others to write it, but my problem with having all these policies is anybody following it. Look at this. See, physical security, personnel security, logical security, third-party applications for my data centers. How am I managing my file transform? What am I going to do when personally owned or university unmanaged devices? I have right now, I'm using a computer from the university, and they're basically are managing this. They know where my computer is. They're following me, and not only they're following me, they know all my other devices where I am. They're following them as well. And notice the same thing, risk management, security. The problem with this is we have it all in paper, and you have even they probably took it from, they have some kind of basically took it from someone else, another form that they took it, but is anybody even looking at this? And who is the responsibility? Who are the users? What happens if we're in violation? And notice they even say here, they took it from a company called RLD DAX. We're wondering if they even read it. Who knows, but they have it. And notice here, what it originated in 2018, was last revised in June, and the next review is in next June. Is that enough time? Who knows? But this is how it is. So this basically, you can go back to this information security office, and this is what they are supposed to be doing, is keeping us secure, but allowing us to do our work. Connected to secure Wi-Fi. This is the reason we want to secure it. The IT security services and our remote access tools. Questions? You got the idea? So basically, it's what? That we have risk, right, Connor? Risk is not zero. As an organization, I have to decide how valuable my assets are and make the risk. Just like if you have a house of a $10 million house versus a $100,000 house, one may be more vulnerable than the other and is more costly. And then having insurance, but the insurer will always say you have to follow the proper procedures, and that's what the university is doing. They're supposed to be doing. And in some states, they have to announce they've been hacked. In other states, they do not have to announce it. But what happens in the dark web, some things get out. For instance, at one point, the hospital was hacked and people found their medical records in the dark web. So people love to confiscate your medical records, and they can use it for fraudulent purposes. And in California, for instance, they have to announce that you've been hacked. But the question is, what are you going to do? And institutions spend millions of dollars on software and on hardware to do this, and it's still being hacked. So AI, guess what? Helps the hackers. AI also helps the good guys, so-called good guys. And they play cat and mouse each time. Okay. Any questions, comments? So Lily, if you'd be so kind and do attendance.
Yep.
And if you share your screen. And I'll stay afterwards to answer any of your questions. So it's what, 8837? You be so kind and put that in the chat for us.
Thank you, Professor.
My pleasure. And I thank my moderators for helping me. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's just us. Sorry, here, I'm putting it in. Mhm. All right, thank you.
Okay.